What's up? Welcome in Star Wars Newsnet Father's Day edition, post Father's Day edition. And because we are celebrating all the fathers out there, I have brought my very own father, who apparently doesn't want anyone in the interwebs to know what his actual name is. So I won't say it. I'm sure you can find out pretty easily if you do any detective work yourself. So he's just going to go by Tyler's dad, apparently, here, which is fine. And before I introduce my father fully, just want to say go ahead, like, subscribe to Star Wars Newsnet. Give us a review on Apple and Spotify at Star Wars Newsnet. Check us out on social media at Star Wars Newsnet for everything. My name is Tyler. Hope everyone is doing well on this. Dropping this on a Tuesday, recording this Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, June 14th. And Dad, it's good to see you. Of course, I will see you in person in about 48 hours from this exact moment as we get ready for, Game 5. I appreciate, you wearing a Star Wars shirt. I'm still rocking my Thunder from last night. So just had to make sure I had a shirt on from the game from last night, but I appreciate you staying on brand. So anyway, for those of you who don't know, my father, educator of several years, I guess, introduced me to Star Wars. So we're gonna have a fun talk. I'm excited to talk to you, Dad, because one, you come from a very unique perspective of, I feel like, experiencing 3 separate generations of Star Wars. So we're going to talk about that. You were instrumental in me loving Star Wars, and I think I was equally instrumental in you loving Star Wars to the extent that you are involved in it today. So I think that's going to make a fun, conversation. And I think also there's just an importance of talking about the gravity that Star Wars has and how it brings in, this multi-generational facet of the fandom. And so I'm excited to get into that as well. But first of all, Dad, I appreciate you have the little setup, of course, very familiar background for me. But before we start, if you look, over my father's shoulder, you see one shelf with various, Funko Pops. There's some action figures up there. And I recall when I moved off to college, that didn't exist. And when I came back, there was just all of this, decor up. So I want to know, was there a time of loneliness for you, with your son out of the house, that you just felt the need to put up all of these, figures or some of the action figures from days past? Or was this just more of a, you finally were able to play with the toys the way you were wanting to because Tyler was finally gone?
Well, you couldn't take everything with you. So, whether it's a celebration or a depression once you left, I'll leave that to you to consider what you think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we this has become kind of a Star Wars / Thunder / movie. It's an all-encompassing room in here, but Star Wars is a big part of it for sure.
So we're gonna get into some of our very competitive households. So we have a game that we're going to play. I'm going to save the game for the end, but this will be a bragging rights victory only. But considering we're going to be spending the next few days together, this is going to be a very important game. Like, the winner can definitively say they know the other, better than the other person. So we're going to have that at the end. It'll be a who knows who better game. Okay. 7 questions. We'll get into that. But first, and before we get into maybe the discussion on Star Wars as a whole, I want to know, there is a specific moment from my childhood that I want to bring up at this point in time. And maybe this is better suited in a therapy session. And we, my sister, your daughter, Madison, is, she's passing her last test to be like a licensed therapist. So maybe we should have included her, into this chat. But for now, Maddie can stay out of this. There was a specific thing, and I mentioned this on the pod before, that you would say to me growing up that was a great way to, one, get me to do exactly what you wanted me to do. 2, really piss me off, and make me upset with you. But 3, would also alleviate the anger and kind of bring me around a little bit to smile. And I want you to see, do you know what I am speaking of? Like a specific thing you did? You have any idea?
No, I have no idea. I mean, talking to you, I feel like hearing your stories, and I've heard you say some things on the pod before of some of your experiences that may have caused you a little bit of trauma, and you being here on Monday night is going to be great because your sister will be here, and maybe we can work through some of these things. But
Okay.
is it anything about an early bedtime? I don't know.
Oh, it's not that. No, this
Okay,
is Star Wars. This is Star
Star
Wars
Wars
specific.
specific. I have no idea. Please share.
So anytime, and you this will the late bedtime, this would go hand in hand. You did say this. This was probably that was probably the one time this didn't work. Anytime, almost anytime, you would make me do a task, or we would have an agreement on a task that I would do, and then I would do it, and then you would want to alter the deal a little bit and
Oh,
then change it, so to speak. You would always say the same thing as when I would throw a fit. It was, perhaps you think you've been treated unfairly. And you would say that, you'd lower your voice a little
yeah.
bit, try to do your best Darth Vader impersonation, which would, yes, kind of drop the tension in the room of me being upset and force me to do what I had to do. But oh my gosh, that pissed me off so
It,
much. It
I
was like
raised the
Snape.
level of
Yeah.
concern, just like Vader did in that negotiation with Lando.
It's like it was almost like, being the massive Star Wars kid fan that I was. It was also a level of, I think, like Snape from Half Blood Prince. Like, you dare use my own spells against me? Like, you're gonna use Star Wars to do that because I can't really be upset when that happens. But we'll see. I prefer that method, I guess, over we watched Battlestar Galactica, together growing up, and then I'm watching Battlestar again right now with one of my friends. I prefer maybe that parenting method than what Colonel Ty would have ever done if he had kids. You freaking son of a, get off the couch, whatever. So I guess that was probably a better way of handling it. One last, this is like a story, thing here we talk about before we get into our main discussion. But this is probably from my childhood. This is, I think, a core memory of mine that took place at home. There's two like key core memories I have of Star Wars. One that we have talked about a lot, and I think will come up later, but this one I don't know would come up as much. And this is one that I think solidified me like in my like Star Wars dumb, so to speak. And it was that Christmas morning when I woke up and you had outlined, my room to the Christmas tree, the fireplace with the different hot toys and like the action or the cars and whatnot. But like waiting there was, all of like the Attack of the Clones things, because Attack of the Clones had just come out. And the waiting there, well, that year was, Attack of the Clones came out like in May. This was December. So it's been a few months, but Attack of the Clones come out, and it was like the speeders that crashed. I remember like the Geonosian ring creatures were there. There was all the different Star Wars Jedi that were from that movie. There was a lot of just merch from that movie, all the toys. And I remember just being overwhelmed with excitement, being at 6 years old at the time, getting, all of these Star Wars things from the first movie I remember seeing in theaters. So my question for you was one, was that when did you know that that was what you wanted to do for the Christmas Day surprise? Was it like we left the theater, came to mind? I can't imagine you thinking that far in advance over, something like that. But you can enlighten me here. Or was it later on? And then when two was like just, what sparked that, I guess. I'm curious.
Well, right from the beginning, we were watching the old, the
Mm-hmm.
original trilogy for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the prequels, came out, then by that time you were pretty well versed. And, I can't remember really introducing you to the original shows, the original movies, but
Mm-hmm.
when the prequels came out, all that merch started coming out, and, the action figures, the toys, and so, frankly, that was just your mom and I thinking about what you like at the time, and
Right.
we knew that you liked Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and we always like sending the little trail, from your bed, to the living room in the morning. So
Right.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but
So, yeah, go for it.
as I say, but do I remember a specific moment after the movie going, we got to do this, and 6 months, we're going to buy all these things that come out. It wasn't really like that, but
Okay, so I still have that Attack the Clones backpack that I took to school.
yeah,
Here it is, the emergency roadside backpack. It doesn't open all the way
doesn't zip
anymore.
all the way. Yeah,
It doesn't zip. Yeah, the zipper still doesn't work. Yeah, I haven't really fixed that, but it works in a pinch. So we could go through stories all the time. But so this is you're in a unique situation from people that I talk to on a regular basis, though, is you grew up seeing Star Wars when it came out. Like you were born 1970s, so you were a kid, much like you were not much older than me when like you were probably what 7, 8 years old when A New Hope came out. So my first Star Wars movie that I ever saw in theaters being Attack of the Clones, I was like 6 years old, 5, 6 years old. So around the same age, going through an era of Star Wars. And then when Star Wars Returns for the prequels, like you have kids. Madison was born the year that Attack of the Clones came out in 2002. So, and then obviously 2005 was when we went to go to the late night showing opening night of Revenge of the Sith, which I still remember. And then that was like a second generation, a second wave of Star Wars that you experience in a completely different phase of life. And then fast forward another, decade, and here we are with the sequels, and then whatever we called this era of Star Wars we're in post like the sequels, with the era of like the beginning of streaming, I guess, where now you're obviously still the father, but both kids graduated, both kids moved out of, moving on. Like I live in Orlando now. What era of Star Wars, I guess, one, do you have like a core memory for each era that you kind of like gravitate to? And then is there a particular one of the three that maybe like means something, maybe it means a little bit more, maybe or maybe that's not the right word, because there's probably things that
yeah,
you hold dear to each of
sure.
them, but I'm curious.
Yeah. So the first, I remember as a kid in having the summer reading program, like a lot of people go to at the library,
Mm-hmm.
and I can remember my mom taking me, and for that summer, like the culminating activity is you've read so many books that R2D2 was going to be at the library on a certain
Oh
date.
wow.
And so I have that memory. And I just remember watching the movies. Now, I don't really, the first movie I can remember actually going to the theater to see
Mm-hmm.
was Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
And I think partially it's because I went with my uncle. So I was 13 and my uncle was just driving. So he was just a few years older than me. So, part of it was that freedom to go, not with your parents, and then Jabba the Hutt, lay in Jabba's palace. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was 13. That was something. Um, but the originals were all great. Empire Strikes Back is probably mine, just like a lot of people's. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
their favorite one.
Right.
But perhaps, even though I don't like those movies as much, the prequels are really special to me just
Mm-hmm.
because that, it was when you and your sister were young and we got to start experiencing, new, Star
Mm-hmm.
Wars altogether and kind of see that story of, knowing that Anakin's going to fall,
Right, of course.
but how are they going to put this together? How are
Mm-hmm.
we going to end up seeing this character as a kid, then we end up loving him and rooting for him. That was
Mm-hmm.
kind of you know, something I thought George Lucas did an amazing job with, even if a lot of people think those movies were flawed in some way.
Right.
I like every one, and I think
Mm-hmm.
my biggest memory of the sequel or the prequels was when we actually went to Revenge of the Sith that
Yeah.
night. And
Mm-hmm.
we rarely went to movies on the
Mm-hmm.
opening weekend, you know.
Right.
And we're more of a, we're going to let the crowd thin out a little bit before we go.
Mm-hmm.
But we made an exception for that, and I can still remember the crowd cheering, just when the opening credits, when the
Mm-hmm.
opening, whatever you call the scroll of the script come out,
Mm-hmm.
and then when Anakin, slices off, Dooku's head, everyone just roars in there. And so
I
yeah,
remember.
that's a tremendous memory. With the sequels, it's probably when we went to see Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
My sister was in town,
Yep.
and
Jennifer
we
was in
all went
town.
in this room right here. You can't see it, but I got the little print that they were passing out.
You're right. The TFA
And,
print. I think
yeah,
is it the Jakku? Is the one with the Jakku like Star Destroyers? Been this like
the
yeah.
background, and you can
Mm-hmm.
see Ray there. And frankly, that's my favorite movie of the sequel.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll have to pretend like I didn't hear that. That may have given away something for later, but I'll file that away. I'll file that away. But that might be
It's
cheating a
one of
little
my
bit.
favorite movies
It's
of the
one of
sequel.
your favorite movies of the sequel trilogy. It's
Well,
one of your three favorite.
it was a memorable
Memorable experience. Yes.
I'll have to rethink.
Before,
I
so
feel
this
like what
again, at random times, I'm going to ask you questions that will, that are triggered through something that you say might trigger a memory of mine. And most of this is to resolve, unresolved trauma for me as a child. And so the first thing I
you had it
remember you were talking about, yeah, I had it so rough as a kid, obviously.
rough.
We're sitting here to talk about it.
Yes.
So I've talked about Jar Jar Binks many a time on this podcast, of course, because it's a Star Wars podcast. I have my Jar Jar action figure that's normally sitting like right next to me. I can grab him and show him. Unfortunately, I've been in the process of moving, of course, and all my Star Wars stuff for the most part is packed away. It's in my new apartment that I will be, finalizing my move in the next week or two. Growing up, we had the dancing Jar Jar where you hit the button and he
Yeah.
would say, Misa name's Jar Jar Binks. It's a time to boogie. And then he'd play the little cantina type music. He would
Absolutely.
dance and do all of that. And I know that I was probably annoying and spammed the hell out of that button and played him all the time. Now, for those listening, there was a point where a move happened in the Bradshaw household.
Yeah.
And Jar Jar I never saw him again in the move.
No.
Now I know now that things don't just disappear in the move, like a number of things that just never made their way back. Now I want to
Exactly.
know where I know that Mom did not want Jar Jar to reappear in the move. I know that, and I've accepted that. But what I need to know is, were you complicit in this? Are you an accomplice to murder? Or did you become
Ab-
aware after the fact?
Absolutely not. I find Jar Jar fresh. He's annoyingly wonderful, and I have looked, and I would seek to purchase that exact same Jar Jar toy now, but my wife of 31 years has indicated that it's too much money to spend for something like that. Now, I'll just say I had nothing to do with that. What we had was an agreement, your mom and I, during the move. She could put anything she wanted in a black trash bag, and I committed not to look in that bag, but to haul it in the secret of night to the nearest dumpster and toss it in. And looking back, I feel like that was a mistake. Your Jar Jar wasn't the only thing that went missing. There was a Billy Bass and
The Billy Bat.
probably a few other things that one of us enjoyed that was no more.
Yeah,
So
this is
I'm
lost.
innocent of that.
The biggest lie of all time was when I remember asking for something got back, and I remember I think it just got lost in the move. Some of these
Well,
things happen. I mean, and yes, that's not.
you just
I guess it's
support your mother. I can
no.
come clean now. I can come clean.
Yeah, it was that
It
may have
was her.
sometimes these things happen. Yeah, right. Give me a break. I'm like moving right now. I've moved several times. Obviously, and some things don't get lost. That Janelle's gonna try to pull that crap on me soon. And I'm like, no, I know you threw that away, but it's whatever. But it's fine.
You accumulate a lot of stuff over the years, and you got to let go of some things. But Jar Jar should still be with us today. I'm with you on that.
Well, we'll have to see if we can ever, find a replacement for Jar Jar. Obviously, what is a time? This kind of brings it back here. I think that obviously you got me into Star Wars. Your brother-in-law, my Uncle Keith, also was someone who helped get me into Star Wars. We still have a lot of the original action figures that in the National Toy Museum in America. Like they have the action figures that we just have an abundance of. And so there's that as well. I will give Keith a shout out here. But obviously, you got me in the Star Wars. Fast forward to, I think, present day, there's a level of like reinvigoration for Star Wars that I think I've had an effect on you with, both in like,
Yeah.
you've read all these High Republic books now, or Master and Apprentice, and these other Star Wars prequel books that I've given to you, even like the Thrawn books, and some of these shows where we talk about all the things that are coming out now. I mean, if you would ask me when I watched through Clone Wars, for the first time, or sorry, like Rebels for the first time, I would have thought at the time it's not something you would be interested in. Now you've done the rewatches of all of those things since. What was it like? What's it like to have like your kid, like for me, to like help you like almost get, not that you ever lost an excitement for Star Wars, but almost kind of like reinvigorates a part of fandom. Like I know that because that's a really big part of our relationship. Is Star Wars is a big part of our relationship. Star Trek, of course, is a big part of our relationship. And we've talked about Star Trek. We've talked about how from Grandpa Bradshaw, like down like the level of like how Star Trek has been really important. But those are like kind of some of the pillars, of course, in our relationship. But Star Wars definitely is up there.
Yeah, that's great question. It's it means a lot, thinking about that. You know, when to me it's I think really about connection. It's about relationship. You know, for us, we have many things we can talk about and communicate about.
Right.
But I didn't watch the Clone War. I didn't watch Clone Wars when you did. It was almost like I was talked into it later, and I watched Clone Wars and loved it. And your mom would walk in the room when I'm watching that and Rebels, and she would comment, "Oh, you're watching your cartoon. I see." And I surprisingly just really liked it. You introduced me to Ahsoka, who I know that's one of my favorite characters now, and yeah, it's a lot to process, I think, for me at times. But yeah, the High Republic, you'd be giving your mom like these lists of these books for Christmas and birthdays, and we're just and I'm like, geez, well, does he read anything else? Stack after stack of Star Wars books, and then when I read the first Light of the Jedi, I guess that was the 1st High Republic book, and then I was hooked immediately. I love the High Republic, and I'm looking forward to watching some of that moving forward. But it's at this point, you probably knew a lot more about Star Wars than I ever did. Even back when you were younger, reading Jedi Apprentice books with
Oh man, 100%.
you were reading all kinds of that stuff and telling me about Luke and people I had even no idea were about. So, but it's pretty special.
What I love that there's times we'll talk about random stuff in Star Wars too, but what about Star Wars, and we can both kind of I think share on this, is what about Star Wars makes it so multi-generational? That's a conversation that I think lots of podcasts, lots of people have, is that Star Wars has been around, like we're almost at the 50th year anniversary of Star Wars in 2 years with the Starfighter movie with Ryan Gosling that's going to come out, and here we are having a talk about Star Wars from my father to son. But what about it makes it so multi-generational? At least maybe even just think in the context of our relationship, but I think our relationship too is going to be a microcosm for what overall Star Wars does.
Well, I think it's just something that people can connect with from all generations, because those started with the original trilogy to what we have today. It's a galaxy far, far away. There's who knows how many more stories can be written about that. I just think about the vast number of just cool species that getting exposed to as a kid. Having the you go from a desert planet to an ice planet to the forest planet and all those different people brought in along the way. And sometimes I think, today and yesterday, years back, it's nice to have something to go to maybe after a stressful week, a stressful
Mhm.
day, and it's just fun to plug into that.
Like
And
the escapism aspect
yeah,
for sure,
yeah,
and then it's like generational themes that can resonate with every single person, which is what I like. Like I can talk to you about a theme that's going on, or like something in Clone Wars that I found really compelling and really interesting, and it's something that's like you're like you can't put generational lines on some of that, or even Andor just came out, and obviously Andor does not shy away from hitting on real life, like real world themes that we can make real life parallels to in our day-to-day lives, with a lot of crazy things going on in the world right now. And it's really easy to be able to have conversations that, and Andor is a little bit different because it's very different than normal Star Wars. But even going back to like 1977 and the kind of Star Wars that George opened us up with A New Hope, it's timeless in a way that I don't think can be replicated by anything else, like outside of it's a handful of projects that have that weight on the big screen. But do you have favorite, and this is kind of getting to more of the father son shtick, do you have favorite mentoring moments in Star Wars, like you watch and that's something one that you like can relate to a little bit more, or you feel a little bit stronger about, like as a dad? Are there any that stick out to you that you particularly like,
well,
outside of when Vader is stalking Luke in the dark with his lightsaber on Cloud City, trying to
okay.
bend him
So
to his will? Outside of that.
yeah, I have a few. Um, to me, going back to, I guess, the original trilogies, I just really like Obi-Wan and Luke at the
Mhm.
beginning. Obi-Wan, believes in Luke. He's training Luke,
Mhm.
believes that, he's the one he can help solve,
Mhm.
what's going on. You have to come with me to Alderaan. Like, what?
Right.
What do you mean? So that's one. This idea that even after he's gone, he's still with Luke and
Mhm.
speaks to him, and the the force will be with you always. Um,
That was good.
I like I think about Yoda and Luke later, and in that kind of this mentoring um, grandfather. I don't know if you call Yoda grandfather when he's
Mhm.
900, but he's now training Luke, and he's basically, do or do not. There is
Right.
no try. He's basically telling him he has to do some hard things. He's got to
Mhm.
learn how to face his failures. Remember
Mhm.
the cave. Um,
Remember your
so
failure in the cave, or I this is probably
yeah,
one you enjoy more, is you must unlearn which you have learned.
just sometimes I don't necessarily think it matters how old you are. Sometimes you get advice that doesn't make sense at the time, and then later, you kind of get
Mhm.
it. And so I kind of
Right.
see that with them. And then my
I'm
third,
still I'm still waiting to get it for some of the advice that maybe I've received. I'm sure it'll hit someday.
yeah, there is another. You have a sister. Um, I guess my last one would be, I really liked Anakin and Ahsoka through Clone
Mhm.
Wars.
Mhm.
And, you got this flawed character. We know what's going to happen, has his
Mhm.
Padawan, and he's really teaching her to think on her own
Mhm.
and, um, you know, and probably training her in ways that are different than he was
Right.
trained, and
Mhm.
others would have trained her, but, that's how he trained her. And
Mhm.
then at the end, you saw where she, his training helped her to be strong enough to even walk away
Mhm.
from the Jedi, when that was tough. And then seeing him just almost broken, and that, so hurt when all
Mhm.
that was going on with, Palpatine manipulating, all that stuff behind the scenes. So
Hmm.
you know, there's several. Those three kind of stick out to me.
Hmm. Okay. I would say that on the flip side, I always go back to a lot of, I don't know why, but I always go back to a lot of Kanan Ezra. Like I go back to Kanan Ezra so much, and I love Rebels so much right now. So I go back to a lot of Kanan Ezra, and really Kanan slash Hera and Ezra, I guess, because Hera also has, in a different way, like an equal part of, I think, mentoring Ezra in a large respect. And I just always go back to like Kanan's sacrifice and the parallels of Kanan, using the Force on one side and the other, and he's got the arms apart, and then like that's what we see Ezra do, a few episodes later, which I really love. Obviously, Yoda is the thing about Yoda too is beyond just Luke is we're able to see him have conversations in the prequels. But then what I love is the fact that we get Yoda again in The Last Jedi, still imparting wisdom to Luke later on. And
Yeah.
then, there's parts in the High Republic that you read where Yoda has these very, pointed conversations with characters like Elzar, and in the comics, like he's having conversations with some of these characters. So I love the fact that we kind of get these Yoda sequences throughout, all of Star
Mhm.
Wars. Obi-Wan's an interesting one because I think this is maybe like where our generational gap comes into play, because, and maybe this is something that maybe is a flaw for me, is when I think of Obi-Wan, I think of Ewan McGregor first and foremost, and I always go the prequels. That's part of being born in 1997 and growing up the prequels, versus your immediate thought of Obi-Wan was Alec Guinness, like mentoring Luke from the very beginning, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And actually, I didn't mention that before, but obviously, I think about him as the old man,
Mm-hmm.
but I think you know that deepens after Ian McGregor's
Mm-hmm.
performances. As like you know, he wasn't. You know, Anakin wasn't his Padawan through the normal means of that
Right.
happening. He made
Mm-hmm.
a promise to Qui Gon, and so and they're so close in age, really. In some ways, it
Mm-hmm.
was almost like you know a brotherly type
Right.
mentorship at some level. And but watching through Clone Wars, and then even the Kenobi series, which I really liked,
Mm-hmm.
seeing him there all that time, and even looking after Luke. So yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
agree with you that
Mm-hmm.
I can see definitely you would think about
Mm-hmm.
that character more so
Mm-hmm.
than Alec Guinness.
Okay. You have your whiteboard ready?
I got it ready.
You got your dry erase marker. Okay, so we're going to play a game of who knows who more. I have 7 questions, okay? So here's what we're going to do. I will give you the opportunity to go first or second, okay? You
Okay.
can you can pick which one you want to do. I have 7 questions, okay? I
Okay.
will ask the question. Let's say you choose to go first. And for instance, the first question is, who is your favorite Jedi of all time? Okay? It's very simple. You would write down your answer, and I would write down what I think your answer is going to be. If I get it correct and I know who you are thinking of, you have to be honest. Okay, you have to be honest. You can't just be like, today, Luminara is going to be my favorite Jedi, because I know Tyler's not going to put Luminara. This is more for me to keep me in
Yeah.
check, because
You know, you're going to have to keep in mind that you know you have about 1,000% more knowledge of the Jedi than I do. So you may have to shrink down some of your uh,
well, no,
answers.
I'm not going to sit here and go that
I mean,
Kildar,
there's a whole bunch of them you
Mac
could say, but yeah,
Vildar Mac from the High Republic
yeah,
Phase 2 is my
yeah.
favorite. I'm not going crazy here.
We're going through some
But
comic
no,
books.
right. Right. So,
Okay,
no, anyway, so we'll keep track. We'll
okay,
go you know, you can go first, or actually how about this? We can go back and forth. Like we'll
okay.
give
Let's go
question
back and
1
forth.
and we can go, yeah, then we can rotate who has to go first, and we'll just keep track of points.
Okay,
I have me, and I have a dad for points here. Okay, just
okay.
for quality assurance, me and dad. Okay, that's where I can
Got it.
keep track of the points. All right. So question 1, we'll go you first here. We'll go you first here. Okay. Question 1 is, who is your favorite Jedi of all time? You're writing down your favorite Jedi of all time. I'm writing down what I think your favorite Jedi of all time is.
Okay.
Here we go. If I do not get this right, I'm going to be very upset. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. It's Luke Skywalker. No, I should have known that's. Oh, man. All right. No point for me. All right. All right. Now my turn. I'm going to write down my favorite Jedi of all time. And you are going to write down what you think my favorite Jedi of all
Favorite
time.
Jedi of all time. Oh, my. Favorite Jedi of all time.
I missed it.
Seems like you're riding a long time. Maybe that's helping me.
I'm just kind of doing this. All right. Are you ready?
No.
Oh.
All right. Hang on. I'm not confident in this one.
You're not?
I'm not confident that you know your favorite.
You're not. I mean, my favorite might change, here or there. All right. You ready?
No, hang on. All right. Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Reveal. Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka Tano. You thought is Vernestra
Vernestra, I don't know. You talk
Okay.
about her a lot. You talk about her a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
I should have known that one. I should have got that one.
Vernestra Rowe. Okay. Yeah. High Republic Jedi. Of course. All right. It's fair. That's fair. All right. Next question. I'll go first this time, just so we can change it up. Favorite duo in Star Wars. Favorite duo in Star Wars. What is my favorite duo? And then what would be, obviously your favorite duo. So do mine first. Hopefully my marker doesn't run out of ink. It's kind of getting low, I feel like. All right, I got mine. You ready? Anakin and Ahsoka. What'd you put?
Han and Chewie.
You're wrong. Man, we're not doing a very good job here. You got no points still. All right, I'll write down what I think I'm going to write down best duo for what I think you're going to say. All right, I got it. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Han and Chewie.
I should have just put Han and Chewie. I put Obi and Anakin. All right. After 2 rounds, the score is 0-0.
Woo. Good.
We're really got a heater going on here. All right. So this one, I asked this anytime I interview a Star Wars author, I ask this question. Okay. What character in Star Wars would you choose for your trench run, wingman? So you have any character in Star Wars, they're your wingman for the trench run. Okay, they're right there alongside you. They're trying to ward off, the X-wings, all the. Who is your trench run, not co-pilot, like wingman that you're going to have to go into battle with? I got it. I think that I'm going to get my first points here. You ready?
Is this for me? I'm answering my favorite or your favorite?
Yes, this is for your favorite. This is yours. This is your choice.
I'm
All right,
ready.
3, 2, 1. What do you got?
Luke.
Nope. It's not Han.
Well, Han was Luke's wingman, but if I need a wingman, I want Luke to be my wingman.
It's fair. I mean, he does have experience in the trench run, I guess.
He's the one who made the shot.
I'm not knocking you. I'm just saying. All right.
Okay.
Here we go. I'm writing down this is mine now. Which character would I choose for my trench run wingman?
Trench run.
All right, here we go. Ready? I got it.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Reveal.
I
got Han. You're more in the High Republic weeds than I am with Avar Chris. on
Well,
there. When did she even pilot? And we're not even watching her
she,
pilot in the High Republic.
have you heard about her being on a Vector,
I've heard about her being on a Vector.
the Jedi Vector, just
I've heard about the Vector.
wiping people out? Have you heard of that?
Wiping people out. Like, no,
Yeah, maybe
no.
that was someone else. I should have
That
said
was someone
Han.
else. All right, after 3,
We're
the score
tied.
is still they're still tied. It's a deathlock. This is good. I really thought we'd be better at this. We still have bonding to do, I guess, over. But we'll see. We could end up, this could
Okay.
be better. All right, this one is tricky. This one be tricky. What is the most devastated you've been by a Star Wars moment? And I believe it's my turn to go first. So, is the most devastated I've been by a Star Wars moment?
Wow.
All right.
So
I have mine.
encompassing all of Star Wars.
And all of Star Wars, the
Okay.
most devastated I've been. This one's tricky. This one's difficult. This is a difficult one because there's a lot of sad moments in Star Wars. But I feel, this is the first one. I would say there's 3 moments. 2 are like on the interior. This one's number 1. All right, what do you got? I put Anakin's fall. Anakin's fall to the dark
I
side.
need to stay away from High Republic. I was thinking of Loden's death.
You're just. That's the. I mean, hey, Loden's death, devastation, right? But come on, like we're talking about Revenge of the Sith. We're talking about a Star Wars movie here, Dad. I know.
I'm overthinking it.
Are you trying to just show off your knowledge of the lore right now?
No,
Are you trying to
to
flex like, hey guys, I know who Avar Chris is. I am a subject of authority here. My son doesn't know everything. Look at this over here.
It's 0-0.
That's fair. Should I put? I think. Well, hold on. I think saying, like I was in the same ballpark. You're 200 years in the past. Oh, all right. So devastated. Are you gonna put Loden's death? Should I just go ahead and write Loden's death right now? All right? We're talking about your most devastated Star Wars moment.
All right. Most devastated Star Wars.
I'm writing Loden's death. I'm writing it down right now. I'm writing it down right now. He's never been more sad.
Star Wars moment. This is tough. I feel like I need more think time. But
all right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. What do you got? I put Luke's death. No, I should have. I was gonna write that down because I was like, surely after I said it, he's gonna stick with it. But I was like, no, he's original trilogy guy. He's gonna need to give some shouts to the Luke Skywalker dying, all that kind of stuff. All right, we are through 4, 0, 0. Still, all right, this one. We will give. How about this? This is a good, easy way to get points on the board. We're gonna do favorite movie from each trilogy. Okay. Favorite movie from each trilogy. You get a point per correct answer of the 3. Okay. So you're first. You're writing your 3 favorite movies. Okay. So we one from each trilogy. Okay.
I have to think about that third one.
All right. Ready?
Yep.
All right. Empire, Revenge, Force Awakens. Okay. I put episode 5, episode 3, episode 7. So I am on the board. I am officially 3 points on the board. My markers are going there. So, all right. There it is. 3-0.
Okay.
I got points. All right. Now we're doing my favorites. See if you can do my favorites from each trilogy. Okay.
Well, this is hard. This is tough.
All right, you go first. What did you put? What did you say my favorite from each trilogy are?
Okay. Empire.
Empire. Let me see the board. I want to see the board. No, no, Shannon. My hands are up here.
Empire.
Empire.
Right.
Okay, correct.
Revenge.
Eh,
Did you say Phantom Menace?
I put Phantom.
Huh.
I
You
put
know,
Phantom.
like this is where I'm not sure that you know yourself. I know you.
I have never said it's the best one. Revenge is the best one of the prequel
That's your
trilogy.
favorite. Okay.
Phantom is my favorite.
Okay.
I love Darth
And
Maul.
The Last Jedi.
Yes, correct. I got it. I read here. 518. 518.
Okay.
I've probably watched Phantom Menace more than any movie ever. And that may not bode well for me as a person. Like that may say a lot about me as a person, but it's just I love the pod racing. I love Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon's one of my favorite characters. The Duel of the Fates, coming in at the end, and you got the battle. I love that. I love Urugunga, like the different planets that we go on. I love that one. Revenge. So here's why Revenge can't be my favorite. I'm like, you know me. I'm very emotionally charged individual. And that movie makes me so sad that I can't watch it very often. Versus Phantom, there's some sadness, but there's a lot of just epic moments within it that I'm like cheering for. Versus Revenge is more of this, it's very solemn. I'm like deadpanned, but I don't know. There's something about Phantom. I don't know. I love it. It's very rewatchable for me, which is why. But Revenge is definitely the best of the trilogy. So the score is 3-2. We have 2 questions left. Okay. All right. I go first this time. Which crew or group would you choose to be a part of? The Ghost Crew, the Bad Batch, the 501st, which is Anakin's Legion of Clones, the Children of the Watch, where Din Djarin, Mando's group, or, and this is specifically for you, the Vessel from the High Republic with Geode and Leox and Affy. Okay, so I'll say one more time. Which crew would you most want to be a part of? This is for me first. The Ghost Crew, the Bad Batch, Children of the Watch, the Vessel, or the 501st? Here we go. Jotting down my answer. I have my answer. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I got the Ghost Crew. Ghost Crew.
Ghost.
Nice. There we go. We're on a roll now. It's tied up 3-3. Okay. All right. You write down yours. It's Children of the Watch, the Vessel, the 501st, the Ghost Crew, or Bad Batch. I have my answer. I have what I think. It's written down in case there's any doubt. You're doing some thinking over there. I know you're drawing a rock, aren't you?
Yeah, give me the list one more time.
The Vessel Crew, so Geo, Naffy, Leox, of course. Yeah. The 501st Legion of Clones, okay? You have the Children of the Watch, the Bad Batch, or the Ghost Crew. To me, this is, if you don't put what I think you're putting,
tough call.
All right, what'd you put? All right, let me say this. The Batch. Okay, I put the Ghost Crew. I was wrong.
Yeah.
It's tied up. Okay, explain the Bad Batch. I didn't know you loved the Batch that much.
I do like the Batch. That was a tough call. I enjoyed that show and the different clones. I'd like to, hang out with those guys on a mission. Mm-hmm. I know that you absolutely love Rebels, and and I like it a lot too. And so, who knows? You ask me an hour from now, and I might definitely go with the Ghost Crew. But part of me wants to hang out on the Vessel.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
I want to see when Geo just does something really cool, like lay someone out. The way they script him is pretty funny. you know.
All right. So it is 3-3. We're going into the last question. And this is the nerdiest question of them all. Winner
Okay.
take all. Last question. I mean, you couldn't ask for more than this moment right here. It's 3-3. Favorite Star Wars book of all time. Favorite Star Wars book. And I believe I went first. It is you are up first. You are up first. Favorite Star Wars book.
So yeah, I'm not going to be as good at remembering the titles, but am I going first for
You're
myself?
going first. I'm trying to figure out. I think I have narrowed it down to 2 Star Wars books that would be your favorite. I'm just trying to decide which one I'm going with here. And I think I have an answer. I'm going to go with my gut. Although, given your recent track record during this, I'm thinking I might be wrong. Okay.
So I don't
Written
remember
down.
the name of it, so I will briefly explain it. Then you can tell me. So I gotta.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
So my favorite one is from the High Republic,
Ah!
and it's the one where Elzar and Avar kind of reconnect.
Temptation of the Force.
Okay.
That's okay. So I had
Yeah.
two. I had two. That was one of the two. The one I wrote down though was Master. Let me put it right here. Master and
Oh,
Apprentice
that
with
was so
Obi-Wan
good.
and
Yeah.
Qui-Gon
Yes.
on their mission.
Yeah, I love that one too. And yeah, I'd like to read more about them.
Oh man. Okay, so 3-3. If you get this right, you win. And I will say this. My favorite Star Wars book, if you keep up with what your son podcasts about, every once in a while, I have mentioned my favorite Star Wars book multiple times.
You have.
So are
Yeah.
you feeling pretty confident right now?
Not necessarily. Now you've mentioned all the books all the time, and I know specifically you've said this book is my favorite. And I'm going to go with Cataclysm.
It is Cataclysm is what I wrote down. It is
Update the score, please.
4-3 to the
Update it.
old man.
Show us the score, please.
It's 4-3.
Thank
4-3.
you.
The old man is
I
victorious.
am still the master.
I
Much
didn't think
to
there was any
learn, you
way.
still
I
have.
didn't think there was any way I was losing this game. I didn't think especially the way the first 3 questions started, and you're just going with all the High Republic characters that we've talked about through the books.
And you came up with the questions. You've had all this time to be pondering.
Let's be honest. I came up with the questions 5 minutes before we hopped on here. I haven't been sitting on these for weeks, probing you for answers like, Dad, I've been thinking about Jedi recently, and I just really love Obi-Wan and so-and-so's connection.
That's funny.
Oh man. Wow. So you got the book. That's impressive. The book is impressive. The crew, I should have got. I did not know about the Bad Batch. That was one that, it surprised me a little bit that the Bad Batch was up there, because I remember we talked about the Bad Batch a lot, and whenever the episodes came out. But what about, which do you have a favorite member of the Batch? I guess before I'm curious.
Oh well,
Didn't expect that one to come up, huh?
yeah, I didn't expect that. But who doesn't love Wrecker? I mean,
Okay, yeah.
someone who's just he's a loyal dude, and he's willing to knock down walls and do whatever for his people. But they were all great with Omega, and so I mean I really liked all of them. I mean it's hard to pick one. I'd have to remember all their names.
So the last couple of quick hitters here, so we can get to know, we can round out, Mr. Bradshaw as if you were, you're a principal of several years, a teacher of several, you were an educator of 28 years now?
Actually, 32
32
years
okay.
coming up. Year 33 is coming up.
Okay, so you are an educator of 33 years. Off the top of your head, don't spend too much. Don't overthink this.
Okay.
we all have, and I'm a teacher, obviously, so I can, we all have, there's sometimes that kid that walks into school, you've gotten to know the bit, and then part of you's like, all right, here we go. Like, we just got to get this kid through. Maybe they're the most annoying kid in the universe, but you're like, all right, but you're a little bit nervous about how the day might go for this individual. Which Star Wars character, if they're walking into, Roosevelt Elementary, are you holding your breath that, all right, no problems today?
So the student walking in is a Star Wars character?
Yes, the Star Wars character's walking in. It's a new
Okay.
student.
And I have some concern about them.
And you have some concerns.
Oh, shoot. I mean, right now I'm thinking of Cad Bane. I mean, I'm not going to get anywhere with like I'm hoping to survive elementary school before he completely goes on his reign of terror.
Oh man. So okay. All right. So Cad Bane. Now we both are in education for the kids. We love the kids. And every, educator knows that, if it was just about working with the kids, then educating would be so much easier. But unfortunately, most of these, children, the children have parents that come to the school and think that they know more than said educators sometimes. Not, obviously not sometimes.
Sometimes.
Which character in Star Wars, maybe like a parent, would you, think would be the most overbearing as an educator? Like this, like you see them park their car or they park their speeder, they're coming up to the school, and you're like, oh great, here we go again. They're up to cause problems.
I do not want to see Mace Windu parking his car, walking in. He's going to be super smart. He's not friendly, and chances are he's going to try to make you feel small.
He's going to make you feel small. Okay, all right. Last one on the education side of things. It is we've had parents, teachers. Now, even as a principal, you have people that you have to answer to. At the district, you have, the school board of education, you have the superintendent. Okay. Who would make the worst superintendent in Star Wars?
Well, I'm thinking of Jar Jar.
I
mean, he's been around some super intelligent people. I mean, he was with Padme. He was with Qui-Gon. Saved him. But just being around those people sometimes doesn't make you competent.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Yeah.
When we saw what he did with his first ounce of leadership was giving Chancellor Palpatine the emergency powers to create the Grand Army of the Republic and start our, reign towards a dictatorship. All right. This is a family question, and we're moving away from education.
Okay.
How long have you and mom been married now? I should know this, but yeah, it's been a long time.
31
years, right? Okay. And the queen, is, we're not going to, there are no foul words to be said about the greatest mom in the galaxy. However, we both know that getting mom to watch Star Wars is not always something that is, she's not as fired up to do as, say, if we were like, hey, you want to watch an episode of Downton, which we both love. Sure. Downton Abbey, though. We both love Downton Abbey. Okay. So has there ever been a time where you successfully manipulated the queen into watching Star Wars? Maybe she wasn't thinking that was going to be on the agenda, but you were able to work it into the agenda without just her simply being merciful and agreeing to watch Star Wars.
Well, I would never use the word manipulation when it comes to your mom.
Sorry, of course not.
But what I would say is that, we have shows that we watch together. Mm-hmm. And I have been able over the last couple of years to add Star Wars into it. And so oftentimes there'll be a situation where, would you like to watch this, or would you want to watch an episode of Mando? So, or Boba Fett. And so over, I think it's been about a 2 year period now. We've completed 2 seasons of The Mandalorian together,
Mhm,
and we watched Boba Fett, and we just started Mando, season three.
mhm.
So it's kind of a slow ride with your mom, and occasionally, especially during a Boba Fett there at the end, it seemed like I'd glance over and maybe she was, dozing off a little bit, but she does like The Mandalorian.
Okay, that's fair.
But
Very
but
diplomatic
no,
answer.
she's too smart for that manipulation. I'm not
All
gonna.
right, last one. Who was the easiest Padawan to train? My sister or myself?
Oh, you would be easier to train than your sister. Um, and I'll just use the example of going to the gym when you were both going through high school to shoot. We had a really oftentimes a good experience,
An
and
amicable
had a lot of
relationship.
fun. And I mean, tempers may flare up from time to time,
Right.
but you know, your sister, man, she's got a different level of
She's
um,
serious.
stubbornness and seriousness that when we would go to the gym, it was all business, and there it wasn't as much a negotiation on what the plan was.
Right. You know who would have made if Madison was in Star Wars? Like Mace Windu would have been a great like master for her if the council had showed up and Mace was there, like just no nonsense. We're getting to business, but he has thick skin too to take on, the
Yeah,
attitude that it might happen. Like
yeah.
he would have been a quality master for her.
Yeah, he definitely would have. I would hope that she would have gotten a different master, however, who who would see that toughness and desire to be perfect,
Hmm.
and then maybe help her relax, at times. Now, there's really no Jedi master that I can think of right now who really fits that bill in the original
Maybe
cast.
like maybe not original. I'm thinking of like High Republic officer. I'm thinking like maybe
Yeah,
like a loading grade storm or something.
yeah, Loden. I think Abar would be good.
Mhm.
Um, a number of the High Republic, Jedi
If
masters
if
would.
Qui-Gon was her master, how long would it have taken before she's going up to the council? You got to get rid of this guy. He's making me read prophecies for crying out loud.
Yeah, yeah. She would not have enjoyed the prophecies.
Should not have been about the prophecies.
She would be wanting to be an expert swordsman.
Mhm.
Doing the forms
Yes,
and that
would have
kind of
been. She would
stuff.
have mastered all forms. Is
Yeah,
there a Star Wars project you're looking forward to that's like the most right now that's coming out? Obviously, there's a bit of a gap. We're just finishing Andor. I know you loved Andor, but
yeah,
there's Ahsoka season 2, the Mando and Grogu movie that comes out. There's a Darth Maul show, and then Starfighter with Ryan Gosling that comes out in 2 years. Those are like the four projects we know of right now that are actively in development. So, which one of those four are you maybe looking forward to the most?
I'm looking most forward to Ahsoka season two, and
Oh,
I loved the first season.
mhm.
Love Ahsoka. Um, she's definitely in my top, 3 or 4, Jedi. Um, I'm looking forward to seeing the new character who's taken on um, the role. Was it Balin? I can't remember the guy who
Oh
plays
yes,
the Balin.
Rory McCann, who's
Yeah,
taking
that
over
guy
for Ray
taking over that
Stevenson.
role. I'm
Mhm,
really looking forward to seeing what they do with Thrawn in season
mhm.
two, and Ezra, and cool that Anakin's there. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
really looking forward to that most.
Okay, all right. I did not think you would say. I thought you would go Mando Grogu movie back on the big
Yeah,
screen, but
yeah. I
I
mean,
get it too.
I'm excited about that too, for
Mhm.
sure. I mean, they're probably about even.
Right.
I mean,
Any final Star Wars memories or something that you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to air here on this check-in?
no, not necessarily. It's been really fun to see your growth and what you've done with Star Wars, and I enjoy watching the show. You live, in Florida, and I'm here in Oklahoma, so obviously I don't get
Mhm.
to see you as much as I'd like. And so anytime I'm listening to the show, and I like to listen to the show and take notes sometimes, and send you my notes and what I thought was really good, because you know um, when you start it there at what 8 9 o'clock, I mean,
It's like it's
sometimes,
sometimes 10 or
yeah,
11,
yeah,
so you're
sometimes, I
asleep.
mean, that's after my bedtime to watch it live. But
Right.
no, I'm proud of you, and I love Star Wars, love talking about it, and so really that's all I got.
All right. Well, Dad, I love talking about Star Wars with you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in just a couple of days. I will have to pack at some point, but everyone, give my dad a nice comment here in the channel or on Apple, Spotify. And thank you for coming on, Dad. Love you. I'll see you soon. Everyone, like, subscribe. Make sure that you said Happy Father's Day to your father, because this is coming out post Father's Day. But it's not too late to say, howdy do, love you, and see you later to whoever you consider to be your father or even just a mentor in your life. For Light and Life, everyone, remember that we are all the Republic for now.